All right, ladies and gentlemen. Oh wait, I'm not in a party. 1 second. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host for today's broadcast, Insane Leader 13, and I want to thank you very much for joining us for today as we're preparing to get away for the second of our 10-race series here for the IESC Multiclass. Once again, we have 3 different categories to serve up to today: DPIs, LMP2s, and GTs, and it looks like we're going to have a lobby of similar size to last week. The main difference, though, is that the LMP2 lobby size is a little bit smaller than normal, so we're going to be seeing that difference made up by extra cars in both the DPI and the GT classes, primarily the GT classes. So real quickly, I do want to go ahead and introduce you into some concepts that will be held on throughout the rest of the season. Through the first race, no one decided to get involved in any of the challenges, but I will go ahead and get into them now. So the challenges are typically a way that have held over from the first season of the multi-class, where drivers have unique handicaps put on them throughout the race, and if they can still perform at a high amount, they will get a multiplier to the points that they'll earn in the event. It is an interesting way to kind of randomize the way that the overall points end up going. Real quickly, as we look at here are some of the challenges that we'll be looking at in today's event. Number 1, there are 7 different challenges. Number 1 is known as I Am the Bar. That is a fastest lap of the class during qualifying. That is getting the pole position, basically. It's one of the easier challenges to get, and there's not really much of a multiplier for it. It is merely just getting you extra points for your for your pole position victory. Then the number 2 is called Beat This. That is the fastest lap within your class in that race. That can get you points if you get that as well. Both of those challenges are probably the easiest to beat if you know that you have a significant advantage over the rest of the field. Number 3 is taking the pole and winning in the same race, so taking a win from the pole. That gets you 4 extra points if you're in the DPI or LMP2 category, 12 if you're in the GT category. Then we start getting into the interesting and difficult challenges. Number 4 is known as Fresh from the Factory. There is no restriction to win the race, but the challenge here is that you need to run the entire race with the stock tuning. So there is not going to be any adjustment whatsoever. You will have a 50% added on to your point tally at the end of the race if you can complete under that challenge. It's one of the harder challenges to complete, but it is a viable option. Number 6 is known as number 5 is called Podium Promise. Number 5th challenge means that from the start of the second lap, you need to go the rest of the race without ever being outside the top 3. Then number 6 is known as Untouchable. Untouchable is known that you are supposed to lead every lap in the category. Now you do not have to do it from the pole, so lap 1 technically doesn't count, but because that's a pace lap, but from the end of the first racing lap to the end of the race, you're required to lead every single lap in your category. And then number 7 is starting the race with the drive-through on the very first lap. This is actually a shout to Larry Perkins, who ended up winning the Bathurst 1000 several years ago with damage on the first lap and was able to bounce back and take home the victory. It basically means that you will end up having to make an extra pit stop compared to the rest of the field across the entire race. So that is the challenges throughout the event. For today's race, we're going to be looking at Scored Buffalo. He's going to be doing the challenge for the Larry Perkins Trophy. He will be making a pit stop on the first lap of the race. Will be interesting to see because he basically is going to have to overcome an entire extra stop today with that. OTR Anonyms in the LMP2 class is going to be doing every single challenge at once, if possible. I'm sorry, every single challenge except for the number 6 challenge, because he's not going to be able to lead every lap if he pits at the end of the first lap, because there are other LMP2 cars. Also, Larry B. the G, who is in the GT class, he is going to be doing the number 4 challenge. That is the challenge for running his car fresh from the factory with a stock tune on it. Then you also have, I already said OTR Anonyms. He's doing 1 through 7 without the number 6 challenge. OTR Anonyms is going to do challenge number 6 at Coda, though. And then Scored Buffalo, who is in the GT category, he's already got challenge 1 done, which is gain the pole position. He's already locked up pole. He needs to jump back into the lobby before everything is over, and then he will go for the number 2 challenge, which is the fastest lap in his category throughout today's event. Now we want to get into the other thing that's going to be very interesting here. 1 second. Let me change sort to category. All right, now here's the other thing that's very interesting. This is a wet weather scenario. The race is going to start in light rain, but gradually the rain's going to lighten up. There is a possibility that by the end of the race, the track will be nice and dry. So the lap times are only going to get faster and faster as the day goes on. So for drivers like Sword Buffalo, they need to make sure that they have a build that is very competent in the dry or in the very light rain, and then on top of that, be sure that when it gets to that point in the race, it can still run competent laps, and they're still in a position where they can do those clean laps. Again, thankfully, we don't have as many drivers as we would normally have if it was, say, real life, the real-life endurance racings that come here at WEC or at IMSA. We only are able to max out with a lobby of about 22 cars. But lap traffic is going to be a very major factor throughout today's event, and as this race goes on, it's going to become more and more of an issue. There are a few people we're waiting on to have jump back in to the lobby. So word is that Scored Buffalo has had an internet failure on his end. And if Scored Buffalo is not able to join, we may be in trouble. So of the drivers who are here, and this could actually really hurt Scored Buffalo because he did get the pole, but he will not get the point for starting on pole if he is not able to jump back in. He has been given 11 and a half minutes to try and jump back into the lobby. So anyways, here are the drivers as they are throughout each of their categories. RZM Arsenal has gone from the Ford to the Chevrolet category and is easily locked up the top position. Wait a second. 1 second. Huh. Alright, so RZM Arsenal is going to be starting on the pole position in the DPI class. 1 minute. I want to check something because I just got information on something that I did not expect. Alright, well, it just got interesting news. So Arsenal, who won last week in the Ford under controversial circumstances, actually had all of his points from that Daytona win last week stripped because he has gone and swapped from the Ford to the Chevrolet. So at the start of this season is actually Schumacher, who is at the start of the second race, is actually Schumacher who is leading the points in the DPI category, followed by Dino Prime, then Tactical Fallout, and Arsenal technically has no points coming into this event. Now that will change. He does have pole position. He's expected to walk the entire grid throughout today's race. Arsenal now on top in his DPI category. Tactical Fallout will be starting second. He is still in that matte black 711 machine. Third is going to be Dino Prime in the Mobile 1 machine. Fourth is going to be Schumacher SF7. He is now the only remaining driver left in the Ford category. Fifth is OTR Anonyms, and he is on pole for the 2-car shootout that will be in the LMP2 class. He is going to be fighting against LMP Grizz. Anonyms trying to do a bundle of challenges. Grizz just trying to bring home some decent points in today's event. Right now, RZM Brett, if Scored Buffalo is not able to get back in, RZM Brett will be setting on the top in his category. That is a Chevrolet C7R. He will be there with U5 AMVP, who is in another VC7R. RZM Brett in the number 3. U5 is going to be in the number 54. Ludicrous Speed is in the number 66. Ford Shelby. Ford GT. It's not Shelby. I'm sorry. I saw Shelby on the side. I automatically read that. He is going to be right now lying at 4th. It could be 3rd if Scored Buffalo is not able to get back in. SRD Shredder, who is the host of the series overall, is going to be running once again that number 110 BMW. LarryBtheg. He is under the restricted tuning, so he does not have a tune on for today's race. He is in that number 6 Ferrari. Then you have Prius Killer. He is in the number 76 Dodge Viper. TTJ is in the Porsche machine. He is the only driver in the Porsche today. And Deed Speedman has also swapped. He has gone to the Ford GT for today's race. We're still waiting on word if Scored Buffalo will be able to join us in time. He still has about 6.5 minutes left before we are out of time. Okay. So there is one other driver in the GT category, likely to be just the one-off. That will be Coca Gamer 11. He is anticipated to be running. But he'll be starting in the back of the grid. He is running some last-minute testing. He willingly skipped out in qualifying. He is anticipated to only be partaking in this race, but Coca, who won a few races in the first season of IESC GT, was just a GT category, and also the host of IESC in that first season, he will be doing a one-off run today. We are waiting on him to join back in the lobby yet, but he is anticipated to be here for the race itself. Still no word on Scored Buffalo and if he will be able to join us for today's event or not. If he is not, then we could have an interesting fight in every single category. Chevy looks like they might be able to sweep all 3 categories because the Chevy C7R is anticipated to be better than the Ford GT by a small amount throughout today. Now that could be proven wrong, of course. The big question, though, is when the rain starts to dry up and as the track gets faster and faster, whose cars are better set up for those interim conditions? It's not going to be an immediate light switch, hey, it's rainy to dry. We're going to see the rain kind of falling away and falling apart in about 15 to 30 minutes into this race. There will still be some rain, known as a summer drizzle condition, throughout the majority of the middle of the race. But depending on how long the early stages of this race take, we may not even get to proper dry conditions. Teams and drivers, I know some of them said that they went and were saying up for just light rain conditions and summer drizzle conditions, didn't even bother touching dry track conditions because they wanted to go ahead and try to end up ahead of everyone else in regards to track position, and they figured that if dry comes, it's only going to be for about 4 to 6 laps near the end of the race, potentially not enough for the people in proper dry setups to overtake and capitalize. So a rain race, but the rain is anticipated to fall away as the event goes on. We are still waiting on Scored Buffalo and Coco Gamer to try and jump back in their GT categories. So right now we have 14 drivers. We should hopefully be able to get up to 16. Alright, and there we are. Scored Buffalo has now officially joined us. He's going to be, once again, in that big boy BMW motor machine. And then we're just waiting on Coca to join, and then we'll be underway for the race itself. Also, a few other things to talk about real quickly. RZM Arsenal in that swap to Ford to Chevy. He now has no points, so it's technically Schumacher who leads in the DPI category. Now, it's not anticipated to be the case after this race is over, but still, he is leading the DPI category. Small benefit, small win for him. Neither Tactical Florida or Dino Prime 77 seem to be very confident with their ability to try and beat Arsenal today. They're going to be hoping that they can get ahead of him on virtue of some sort of strategy call. OZR Anonyms, he is performing a bunch of challenges today. He's trying to go for pole, which he's already got, fastest lap, and get a whole lot of unique challenges, including leading the most laps today and never dropping out of the top 3 podium positions all day today throughout this race. Then you also are going to have Scored Buffalo here in the BMW. He is going to be starting in the pole position. He is also going to try and get the fastest lap all day today. He's going to have to be able to stick around to the end of the race, though, when the track is at its driest, and we're anticipating the cars will be at their fastest at that point in the event. Not properly moved him up, and there we are. Now Coca Gamer has joined in. So yes, Coca Gamer, he is going to be running in the BMW, the big boy Beamer, as well today. Nice to see the Momo Italy BMW returning. Coca Gamer has a few wins in the GT category. Not likely to win, but it's still nice to be able to see him come back. Other driver to keep focus on, larrybtheg. He is going to be running a stock-tuned Ferrari in today's race, so anticipate him to be way off the pace throughout the rain especially, but as the race goes on, the question is going to be, will he be able to make his way up? Again, the engine is bone stock. All the suspension, tire pressure, everything is going to be bone stock. Just grip and ability to control the car is going to be very, very problematic for this man. And then Deed Speedman, he did not have a great run last week at Daytona, but he has gone ahead and swapped on into the Ford GT platform, so he will be teaming up with Lucas Speed throughout today's race weekend, and probably throughout the rest of the season. There we are. Now Scored Buffalo has been put back at the top of his category, and we'll be waiting to get underway very shortly here. 16 drivers across 3 different categories. 4 in the DPI class, 2 in the LMP2 class, and 10 in the GT category will be making up the fights in today's race. Everyone's beginning to ready up. We're just waiting on Tactical Fallout in the DPI category to ready up, as would we be waiting on SRD Shredder in the GT category, and then we'll be underway. There will be 1 pace lap for everyone to get underway. Also, one other significant change. Last week, the 2 Chevys of Dino Prime and Tactical Fallout had their race results eliminated. They automatically ended up finishing 3rd and 4th instead of 1st and 2nd because the DPI class was required to run 4 pit stops in every single race. They went to the end on only 3. The penalty still held up. However, in response, IESC has gone ahead and said, look, the top category, they are no longer required to make 4 pit stops in a race. We're reducing that from 4 mandatory pit stops to 3. So everyone is only required to do 3 pit stops in their top flight category. And the LMP2 and GT class is still only 2 stops. Also, once again, we want to give a little shout out to Icky1975, as once again, he is going to be the pace car for today's event. So as usual, the DPIs and LMP2s, they will be doubled up side by side when they come to the line. And then about 10 seconds behind them will be the GT category. This is Deed Speedman. He is going to be in the Ford machine. Then TJ Priest Killer Larry B. Coca Gamer has unexpectedly been allowed to start way higher up the grid. I guess he may have run qualified, I just didn't see it. But he's going to be starting 13th in today's event. So Deed Speedman in that Ford GT, he's going to be starting in 17th, last in his category. 16th, this is TTJ111 in that 78 Porsche. 15th is going to be Prius Killer in that number 76 Dodge. Just ahead of him is going to be Coco Gamer in that Momo Italy BMW. 13th, Larry B. the G in that stock Ferrari. It may be stock in tuning, but it's not stock in paint. Absolutely fascinating matte black Alphatauri Red Bull styled machine. 12th is going to be SRD Shredder in the BMW. 11th, Ludicrous Speed in the Ford GT. Ludicrous and Shredder anticipating to be fighting with each other throughout most of the day, and Ludicrous going to try and get ahead of the 2 men in front of him. U5, he's going to be one of the 2 drivers in the Chevy, and then 9th, RZ and Brett, he's going to be the other driver in the Chevy today. And on the pole in the GT category is this man here, Scored Buffalo in that number 31 BMW. Then we get to the LMP2 category. Only 2 entrants. Number 33, Fanatec Machine by Grizz. And then 6, OTR Anonyms, and that number 808. Then we get into the DPI category. 4th is going to be Schumacher SF7. 3rd is going to be Down Prime 77 in that number 77 machine. Then 2nd is Tactical Fallout. Tactical Fallout in that all matte black machine. And then at the front is going to be RZM Arsenal, another Red Bull sponsored Chevrolet. So 3 Chevrolets will be fighting for the top. We're not anticipating to see Schumacher SF7 having a lot of outright fighting in the top category throughout today's event. There may be something wrong with Schumacher because he is just abruptly slowed down back there. Oh, and Tactical Fallout has had an accident. He's going to have to want to get turned back around because the field's about to get going here. There's not going to be a lot of time left. He should be gathering up on the front straightaway. Where's Tactical Fallout? There may be problems as he is rushing to try and get there in time. All right, it looks like he'll pull up at the last minute. So Tactical Fallout, RZM Arsenal, Dino and Schumacher, along with the DPIs of Grizz and Anonyms, will be taking us to the green flag here. And it'll be 90 minutes for racing today. And we are underway. I have a clock set, so we are good to go. And here we are, right off the bat, Tactical Fallout just does not seem to be able to keep the same amount of grip as Arsenal. Arsenal easily jumps to the lead in his category. Schumacher finds himself under a little bit of threat from the LMP2 class behind. OTR Anonyms trying to make something happen. If he can get around Schumacher relatively early in the event, that will mean that he'll be able to open up the fight against Grizz. Anonyms trying to deal with Schumacher. This could end up being a little bit problematic for him. Now, the good news is, for one of the challenges, being the podium positions all day today, you won't have to worry too much about it. But Grizz trying to get on his inside and overtake Anonyms and not lap traffic, but slower traffic in the form of Schumacher struggling in that Ford DPI is going to significantly harm him. Now, it is anticipated that the Ford is a better car than the Chevys in the DPI category, but Schumacher has only been racing in this game for about 1 week, while all of his rivals in the DPI category and everyone in the LMP2 class have been running this game for 5 years, actually a little bit longer than 5 years, basically since this game's launch. So there is a significant skill differential that is coming in, and Grizz has ended up ahead of Anonyms. Now, Anonyms is going to have to go ahead and pit right off the bat at the end of lap 1, the first racing lap. So he's trying to stay ahead of his rival. He got side by side in that high-speed kink and actually lost a bunch of time. So actual overtaking in even the top flight category seems to be very difficult amongst P2s and DPIs. Schumacher's starting to open the gap against Grizz, so traffic might not be as much of an issue in the prototype category. Meanwhile, we take a look down into the GT class. Scored Buffalo, who started on the pole, has the lead, and he is opening up the gap against U5 by a significant amount. But he is going to be doing the extra stop challenge, stopping at the end of the first racing lap. At least that is what we were told that he is considering doing. And that is exactly what he does. So Scored Buffalo going to have to come from all the way up through the field and is going to be well behind a lot of other drivers here today. And this is going to make things very interesting for him as the race goes on. Prius Killer also making a stop on lap 1. I'm not 100% sure if he is on the same challenge or if there's something else going on in that category for him. This is Deed Speedman at number 67 Ford, teammate for Ludicrous Speed. He is running behind Coco Gamer at the moment. Overtaking in the GT category, very, very difficult to do though. Overtaking in any category is very difficult. Now, we are anticipating that the top flight cars should be able to overtake GT cars with less issue, but not no issue whatsoever. Again, one of the big kind of challenges about Sebring is that this is a very narrow track getting off the racing line, and then just even running alternate racing lines through the corners is going to be significantly harder here than compared to many of the other tracks on the calendar. And you can see Ford GT still down on power compared to its GT rivals, as you see Coco Gamer really opening up the gap just in that run to the corner. And the Ford GT closes back in under the straight line speed. This is larrybtheg, who has slipped to this spot in his category. And you can see the fight for a lead up there. That's Shredder, Ludicrous, Brett, a large multi-car fight at the top of the GT category. So everyone's thinking, hey, look, scored Buffalo. He's not leading right now. Let's go ahead and try to open up the gap against him going forward. U5 has taken advantage and gone to the top class. He has Shredder chasing him, and then Brett's chasing Shredder, and Lucas Speed is giving Brett a bit of a headache. Now, this is going to be where Brett's going to be the strongest. Brett's going to have a superior acceleration down the straights compared to the Ford GT of Ludicrous. Ludicrous and that Ford GT will have better braking and turn-in at the end of this straightaway going through the final corner. But then going down the main straight, the advantage goes back to Brett. There's been contact between the Chevy and the BMW up there for first position, but it does look like the Chevy has the advantage over the BMW for now. And you can see Brett running really, really wide. Actually has to kill a lot of his momentum. He holds the inside line, and Ludicrous falls back in line behind. So Ludicrous, he's faster around the track ideally, but just not able to do anything. And here comes the P2 category. That is OTR Anonyms trying to make something happen, and he's going to go ahead and actually get by both of them by taking a much tighter inside line. Now Anonyms sees, oh, Ludicrous gets by, so the door was opened by the faster traffic, and that let Ludicrous sneak by, and now Anonyms caught up behind Shredder, but not able to get by him at the moment. Anonyms trying to figure out a way to get by his GT category contemporaries. He's gotten by Shredder. He pulls up on U5, goes to the inside. A little bit of contact that could open something up for Shredder, who might have a better line coming onto that straightaway. He is faster, but it's not enough. He did not close in enough. It looks like U5 is now starting to open the gap on Shredder at this point in the event. TJ, who is now in the 5th position in his category, is trying to work on a way to get by Brett for 4th. Porsche versus Chevy, and that Ferrari of larrybtheg goes off circuit behind. He was there in the 6th spot, but you can tell that he is really struggling in that machine. Side by side, and Brett gets run a little bit off circuit by TJ. TJ pulls out and lets Brett have the position back, but now it's going to be Ford versus Chevy on this run down to the final corner in the GT class. It seems pretty obvious to me that TJ is running a very high downforce setup compared to basically everyone else in the category. He just does not seem to be able to keep any pace to the drivers ahead, and now here comes the Ferrari trying to get by TJ. And he's going to try and make the outside overtake work. If Larry can make this work out, this would be fantastic. Larry, any advantage he can get on track would be significant for him, because he wants to go ahead and get the extra 50% points advantage. And the higher and higher you score, the better you'll be. Larry goes off circuit there, kind of tucked up behind TJ, but can't make anything work. And now here comes the BMW of Coco Gamer closing in on this duo as well. But in the GT category, it is this man here, U5 and the number 54, who is slowly opening the gap on Shredder, but his main fight is going to be scored Buffalo. Grizz has actually gotten ahead of the DPI of Schumacher at some point in this event, and I don't know where it happened, but Schumacher has actually fallen off pace with his DPI contemporaries. In the DPI category, there is a fight for second. Tactical Fallout has the spot over Dino Prime for the moment. as they go diving into turn 1. But Arsenal has opened up a massive gap over his class rivals. And while he has thrown away all the points in his category from that Daytona win last week, he is going to try and do even better by actually dominating flag to flag in today's run. Goes off circuit there. "12-second advantage for Arsenal 6 laps in, so he is roughly 2 seconds faster than his rivals in the Chevrolet category. So for Scored Buffalo, he's pitted out of the lead on the first lap. He is trying to run as hard as he can to get back to the lead before this race is over. He is in 15th right now overall. Next to last in his class. He had, credit to where credit's due, he has gotten by Prius Killer, but he is a long ways off from the rest of his GT rivals. Now, good news for Scored is that he is turning nice laps in clean air right now, and can use that to his advantage. The counterpoint, though, is that when he does catch slower traffic in his category, it's going to be extremely difficult for him to overtake, because even the smallest advantages don't really seem to get you anywhere. It just kind of sticks you right behind someone else. Coca Gamer has gotten by this man here, larrybtheg, but it's not by much. You see the Ferrari all over the rear bumper of the BMW. Actually pushes the BMW off circuit there for a moment. And as those two are fighting, it will let TJ open up the gap a bit on them. As they head into braking, Larry's not going to go for it here. Not a super ideal spot for an overtaking move. Then you get to your fight for the top 4 positions. Brett currently in 4th, running behind SRD Shredder. Shredder has lost his position to ludicrous speed at the moment. Big slide out of the rear of that Chevrolet. But ludicrous speed is still 2 seconds out from the current class leader and has to deal with the BMW behind. Shredder will close in the biggest amount coming out of this corner. Well, I thought he would close a lot more than that, but he's actually not. There is maybe a possibility that Shredder does not have the car all the way dialed in under these wet conditions and may not be running as much downforce as some of the other drivers. Again, one of the big questions right now is that, yeah, sure, you might be running fine at the moment in wet conditions, but the rain is going to be fading away, and everyone's car is going to improve as it goes from wet to dry circumstances. But the old saying goes in racing that a dry car in wet conditions will overall be faster than a wet car in dry conditions. The question is, though, how long are those dry conditions going to be near the end of the race? Will we even get to dryness by race's end? Because ludicrous speed, looking very respectable in his category, is actually slowly closing in on U5 at the moment. Not by much, only by about a 1/10 of a second a lap. But that means that at that rate, Lucas would catch U5. The good news is that Lucas does have 20 seconds to catch U5. The bad news, though, is that sure, he may catch him. How is he going to pass him? Brett continuing to hound the rear bumper of Shredder. Now he goes to the outside. There's not really any racing room there, and I have to wonder if maybe Brett went to the outside like that. As we ride out the back of that BMW, I have to wonder if Brett went wide like that in an attempt to try and avoid any issues with having his momentum killed by running the exact same line as the car ahead. Now, as they go down the straightaway, normally we'd expect the BMW to actually pull the gap. And we are seeing the gap starting to open up, but then draft kicks in and Brett closes back in under the straight. So I do think that Shredder may be one of the drivers in the GT category that have a car set up more for wet weather conditions than the dry ones. That's probably helped get Shredder into a position over Brett. But dry condition, here's the difference between saying the car between wet weather and dry weather circumstances. Under the wet, you normally want your tires to be nice and straight to maximize the contact patch of your tires going over and through the corners, so that way you're moving as much water off, you have proper grip. The counterpoint to that, though, is that you're going to be reducing the power output of the engine, as we see Brett's going to the inside there. And here comes Arsenal, leader in his category. He's already by the Chevrolet and by the BMW. Didn't take too long. But as I was saying, when you're setting a car up for wet weather circumstances, you want your tires to be as flat to the surface as possible to get maximum traction. The counterpoint to that, though, is that you normally tune out a little bit of torque and a little bit of speed in your cars. Ooh, Arsenal really close to running off circuit there as he was trying to get around ludicrous speed. And now he focuses on U5 and the Chevy ahead. The other thing is that, in addition, you also normally want to run a little bit more downforce, so that way you have a little bit more aerodynamic grip to make up for what's going to be a lack of mechanical grip throughout the event. As we see, Arsenal is going to go ahead and use the DPI superior straight line speed to walk by the Chevrolet. It's not going to be 2015 Petit Le Mans here. The GT category is simply nowhere close to the DPI, even in the wet weather conditions. There is still a fight for second in the DPI class. Tactical Fallout has second. Dino Prime has third. Bit of a struggle by Tactical to get by the Ford GT in the lower category, and that will let Dino Prime get alongside, and he's going to pull away. So Dino Prime uses some traffic navigation to open up the gap on Tactical Fallout, and he is now going to try and see if he can figure out a way to close down on Arsenal going forward. Another thing is that a lot of people are expecting there to be yellow flags for accidents early on the event. We have stayed green from the race start. That also means that it's more and more likely that we'll see racing on a nice dry track by the end of this race. Tactical Fallout really seems to be struggling to get his DPI through the slower GT traffic right now. We have an issue back there with the BMW by the looks of it. That would be Coca's BMW. Oh, and he's off! He's gone off! Tactical Fallout has crashed trying to navigate through traffic off the circuit completely. He's getting back underway now, but it's believed he's the only one involved in that, or not, though. There is another car who is off circuit. That has scored Buffalo. And something has happened to Scored Buffalo that has put him back behind Prius Killer, and this is going to have massive negative ramifications for Scored Buffalo in his chance to try and win in his category, because he is trying to run from a lap 1 pit stop, which is a challenge, and if he fails the challenge, not only is he going to miss out on the points of the win, but he also would miss out on a bunch of points beyond that as well. So major implications here for Scored Buffalo in this race, as he has gone back to last place in his GT category after having blitzed by Prius earlier. And there we are, Prius gets by Scored now, or gets back ahead of Scored. Now Scored's going to try and go on the outside. GT car is very sensitive and touchy through here. And under braking, it looks like Buffalo's going to get it. Really sideways in that BMW. Scored may have one of those cars that are absolutely great by itself, but it seems like under racing circumstances, when you have to get off the racing line, Scored loses a lot of time. And it's going to be a long time before he can start seriously fighting for his class position now. Prius still there behind the BMW. So Scored absolutely suffering early on the event. Meanwhile, at the front of the GT category is still U5. Ludicrous Speed is actually losing time now to the Chevrolet. The gap has opened up to about 2.5 seconds, so right now U5 might be in the position to walk off with his category win if Scored Buffalo is not able to get through the field fast enough. And something somewhere has happened to this man here, SRD Shredder, in the other BMW. He has also gone off circuit, and he is no longer fighting for a top 4 position. So single car instants seem to be the flavor of the day. And most of the battles on track have deteriorated. Of note, after that accident, Tactical Fallout has fallen 10 seconds off of Dino Prime for second in his category. Tac actually runs that Chevy leading in the GT category off the racing line just a bit there in his eagerness to get by. But U5 has enough of a gap over the Ford GT that's not going to affect his race too much. So in the LMP2 category, we've not talked much about it outside of the first lap. LMP Grizz has the lead. He has gotten by the Ford DPI of Schumacher as well. And with that in mind, Grizz leads at the moment. His main goal is, as long as he can stay ahead of Schumacher, or keep Schumacher between himself and this man here, Anonyms, who is also doing that lap 1 stop challenge, then he'll be in a decent position. Anonyms just wants to try and get into the race lead before the event is over. But he's currently a better part of 19 seconds off. He is making up the time from that extra pit stop. But the question is, will he be able to make it up fast enough and get by? Anonyms faster than Grizz, but the DPI of Schumacher kind of held up Anonyms and actually let Grizz get ahead of him on the first lap. So Anonyms fighting a abnormally more difficult than normal challenge amongst the drivers who are running challenges in today's event. This is Scored Buffalo, who has also did that pit on lap 1, basically make an extra stop challenge. DPI Schumacher has gotten by him, and there is a P2 that will be closing sooner rather than later. Also, larrybtheg and Prius Killer fighting, so Larry has been struggling significantly in that stock Ferrari. We know that he has decent pace, but he can't seem to avoid making mistakes. We've seen him go off circuit at least 2 or 3 times today. He's been very aggressive, and to his credit, he is trying his best to overperform in the machinery. But this may be one of the conditions where the driver is demanding more than what the car can give him. And Larry, because of that, has just been pushing the car too hard. He's been losing time, slipping through the grid. There's OTR Anonyms in the P2 class. He's going to want to try and get by these drivers as fast as he can, and he will out-drag him to the straight. Larry's still right there behind the Dodge in the draft. And now as they go under braking here, oh, you can see the lack of front-end downforce causes Larry to go really wide. The rear nearly completely swaps sides with the front there. But Prius ran wide into the tire barrier, and Larry gets back by. So Larry picks one of his positions back up. Meanwhile, at the front of the GT category, it is this man here, U5, as he's opened up a 3-second gap on ludicrous speed. And the rain has stopped falling. It's not actually stopped. This is now what's known as more of the summer drizzle circumstance. So the track's not going to get any wetter. The counterpoint to that, though, is that the track is still wet from the rain earlier. So wet weather setups will still have the advantage right now. And Dino Prime and Tactical Fallout both making their stop a lap earlier than Arsenal, who is leading in the DPI category. We're anticipating Arsenal will pit very shortly here as we brain up the fuel numbers, 10% left. So Arsenal will either pit this lap or next lap. $9% left in the tank. Is this where he's going to pit? No, Arsenal's going to actually stay out an extra lap. As I see Scored Buffalo making another stop. So Arsenal with nearly a full minute lead over his next closest rival within his category, Dino Prime. Not much else to say at this point in the event, honestly. Credit where credit is due. After that accident earlier, Tactical Fallout is trying to close back in on his teammate and rival Dino Prime for second. He has closed the gap from 10.5 seconds to just a bit over 8 at the moment. Also, Anonyms is closing on his rival in category, Grizz. The gap between Anonyms and Grizz is shrinking at this point in the event. As we see Schumacher now pitting. Last of the DPI cars. So Anonyms now has an exact notification of how much he needs to close on Grizz. 14.8 seconds left. And then once he catches him, will he be able to overtake him will be the next question. As see Coco Gamer fighting with TJ farther up. That's for the GT category positions. Those two are fighting for actual on-track spot. Anonyms needs to figure out a way to buy these drivers fast. It's really hard though. This section of the track is only 2 wide through most of it. And Anonym's going to go around the outside. They're going to be 3 wide for the moment. And he is going to get by both the Porsche and the BMW. Considering how wide the Porsche and the BMW is, Anonym's outstanding job overtaking both of them in the acceleration zone. And it does look like for the moment Coco Gamer has the advantage in that fight. Spirited little battle. TJ locks up under braking. He's going to try and turn that into an overtaking spot. Did not make it work though. Coco holds the advantage. BMW versus Porsche and the BMW for the moment has the advantage. So two German manufacturers going at down the back straightaway here at Sebring. TJ seems to have a little bit more straight line speed than Koka in the BMW. He'll have the inside line, deny that to Koka as they go into braking now. But TJ loses so much time. That final corner has not been repaved since the end of World War II pretty much. And it looks like TJ just has better grip under that super bouncy section and will pull out ahead of Koka as our leader in GT category, U5, is going ahead and making his stop. TJ and Koka still side by side. They've been side by side for a better part of a lap now. But again, TJ looks like he's going to hold it over Koka, but Koka gets way better acceleration out of the corners. TJ seems to have better speed at the end of the straights, though, and the force goes off, and here comes Koka back again, and this time Koka will be able to get by going into the braking zone. TJ still has 37% left in his fuel tank. Koka Gamer, when it comes to his fuel numbers, 30%, so TJ will be able to outrun the BMW on fuel by a small amount if he so chooses. But right now, Ludicrous Speed is the man leading in the GT category with 29% left, so he is just going and taking this fuel tank probably as far as he can before making his stop. U5 making a abnormally early stop, and I have to wonder if that's actually going to be a good thing or not, because U5 is going to have to get by these two drivers ahead who are fighting, and they could hold him up a much. Oh, and U5 goes off into the dirt there. But yeah, U5 is going to have to worry about overtaking slower cars in the same category who have not yet pooed, who are going lawn. And here comes Arsenal in the DPI category once more as we ride on board with U5. Arsenal should be able to blitz by him down this straight. Yep, there he goes. So we're going to go ahead and ride silently for a lap on board with U5 in the GT category as he tries to close in on these GT cars ahead of him and trying to get by him as fast as he can. So all things considered, U5 has made everything work out for him as U5 is ahead of Ludacris still by 3 seconds, and he did not have to worry about catching the GT traffic. They all pulled out of the way into the pits before he needed to worry about them. And Ludacris' speed was not able to really close, so the gap is hanging at about 2.5 to 3 seconds between first and second in the GT category. Their big rival, though, is this man here, Scored Buffalo, who is trying to overcome an extra pit stop, but he's had incidents, and as this race is going on, his chance of actually closing on his category rivals seem to be shrinking slowly as the event goes on. In the P2 category, Anonyms is running 11 seconds behind Grizz at the moment. So the gap is closing, and I do believe it's probably closing fast enough. A little bit less than an hour left in the event right now. So 55 minutes left. Is there still time for Scored Buffalo to close and get back into the lead in the GT category? This man, without a doubt, is the fastest on track. But it is not. But at Daytona, he opened up a gap on everyone except larrybtheg. And even then, Larry only closed in the second stint after the final green flag stop at Daytona. Larry said, hey, look, I was pushing hard. I was saying fastest laps, lap in, lap out in the final section, and Scored was still pulling on me. So Scored absolutely has an advantage over the rest of the field here. The counterpoint to that for Scored, though, is that overtaking here has been a problem, and he's been caught up in instance trying to get by cars. And he's also been dealing with traffic in the form of faster cars in the LMP2 and DPI categories as well. Meanwhile, Deed Speedman and the Ford GT just having an overall struggle bus day. Deed's strength has come more under NASCAR rather than GT car categories, and it's definitely showing. He's going to want a yellow flag to try and bunch the field up, but we just have not seemed to have very many yellow flags throughout the day today. U5 continues to lead in the GT class by 3 seconds. Grizz leads by 11 seconds in the LMP2 category. And he has to make his first stop. We're expecting that he'll be making his stop this lap. So Grizz leading as many laps as he can today. OTR Anonyms 11 seconds out. And Grizz, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not 100% sure if Grizz is gonna make it to the pit box with the fuel left in that car. When that thing hits 0, he's gonna start sputtering, and he has to complete the rest of this straightaway and then still accelerate out of the last corner into pit road. Yeah, this is it. He's out of fuel. He's gonna be sputtering. He completely missed the braking zone that time. Does he have the... He will make it into the pits, but how much time has he lost by both running wide there and by running himself out of fuel? OTR Anonyms now closing, and he's going to be able to stay out an extra lap because he did pit the end of the first racing lap. So he's going to pit in the following lap. As Anonyms can see Arsenal ahead. Arsenal in the DPI category. As that DPI is pulling away. larrybtheg trying to make a fight back, and it seems like that Ferrari is starting to improve a bit as this race goes on. He has closed back in behind SRD Shredder. And that will be a fight for fourth in category. Shredder is going to have to stop relatively shortly here, in the next lap or two. Yeah, they're both at 9% fuel at the moment. So these two have not yet made their first of two mandatory stops in their category. That Ferrari definitely taking some aggressive lines. But you can see what's going on is that Larry is really pushing the car, trying to take extra aggressive lines, but the car's ability just isn't there. He is asking way more of the car than what it can actually give to him. The fact that he's able to fight right now for net fourth position, although once he pits, it's gonna change. But the fact that he's fighting right now for net fourth position speaks volumes to Larry's ability. But this is probably, right now, where he's running fifth, and I think this is probably going to be the best he's going to be able to run throughout the day, and I think his finishing position is probably going to be worse than that. He is waiting a long time to make his stop, and he's going to also wait a long time for his following stop as well. Shredder a little bit wide and touched the grass. It's actually going to compromise his momentum. Larry goes deep under braking, pulls up right behind the BMW. So Shredder is definitely struggling. I said earlier, I thought Shredder may have one of the few cars that are idealized for wet weather conditions rather than dry conditions. And while the track is not dry yet, it is starting to trend that way. And I have to wonder if Shredder may be falling off due to that. Oh, okay, never mind. So I can't get reliable information when it comes to people's fuel windows now. But Larry has gotten by Shredder. Going through the final corner, Shredder is going to dive to the inside, and a little bit of contact gets made, but Larry holds the inside, and Shredder gets washed wide. So Larry moves up to fourth overall in his category. Scored Buffalo back ahead of Prius Killer. This is the third time actually this has happened. So Scored seems to just not have the ability to get his car navigated through slower GT traffic. He's really, really good when he's by himself, but the moment he has to start dealing with traffic at all, it seems like everything falls apart for him. And we'd expected by this point that he would be way higher up the order than where he currently is. But that simply hasn't been the case today. You can see right there how much, just in this fragment of a lap, Scored opens up against Prius. And the gap between himself and TJ is 4.5 seconds right now. TJ, another one of those cars who I personally believe was better set up for wet conditions rather than dry. Larry fighting with Shredder. And Shredder has gotten back by him, so these two will not put their fighting aside. Because with all the incidents that has happened with Scored, there is a very strong chance that for Larry, this could be a very positive point stay for him. He finished second last week at Daytona, and now he is well ahead of Scored Buffalo right now. And 50. Oh, wow, Larry gets Shredder sideways, who backs out of it to let that BMW save it. But if Larry can stay ahead of him in the end, it's going to be a massive benefit because he is running this challenge that gives him an extra 50% to however many points he earns coming out of the day today. And he's 5th right now in category. TJ is 6th, and Scorched is 7th. Shredder running Larry to the inside. Larry's going to go to the high side instead. But as they go into the braking zone, Shredder is still ahead and will have a significant advantage under braking. Larry throws it up to the inside, though. Shredder stepped that BMW wide. He cuts down on Larry. That time, Shredder cut down to Larry. And now Larry will go ahead and take the position. And at the line, Larry goes back into 4th. Oh, and Larry goes off circuit there. And that will let Shredder get back by, potentially. You're not supposed to run side-by-side through here. And no, Larry gets it, but he goes off. He gets sideways, completely sideways. Shredder is back by him once again. And Larry is not letting him go. Each driver just kind of keeps throwing mistakes. Shredder just seems to be overdriving. Larry has a car that he can't properly overdrive. As the battle for 4th place continues. I have no words. This fight kind of speaks for itself. This is probably one of the best fights we're having on track all day. Alright, meanwhile, in the DPI category, Tactical Fallout has recovered from his accident and is now fighting with Dino Prime on merit for the 2nd position once more. Tactical has been faster pretty much all day, but has struggled significantly more getting around traffic. And to add insult to it all, these two are now closing in on their DPI category rival, Schumacher, who is going to be going a lap down to them very shortly here. Dino ran a very defensive line. That's the GT, and Dino pits. Dino's going to pit, and he's going to get off sequence with Tactical Fallout. Tactical is going to take advantage of that and try to open the gap just a bit. And that's Schumacher he's closing in on. He's going to try and put Schumacher a lap down. The thing to be particularly aware of, though, is this is in the LMP2 category, Anonyms is closed down to within 6 seconds of LMP Grizz, but he is going to have to get by this duo here in the GT category who just will not stop fighting. Shredder has a position over Larry. Anonyms is going to want to try and catch them through a set of corners where they're not side by side at. He's right behind the Ferrari. The Ferrari typically washes wide here. Anonyms on the throttle, trying to outdrag both of them into the corners. Yes, he will. So Anonyms gets lucky and gets past the GT category cars that are fighting at a moment when they're nose to tail and not side by side. But he has lost about 7/10 to Grizz in that circumstance, though. So it's not going as well for Anonyms as he'd want it to. Of note, Tactical Fallout, who is now leading in his category, he closes on to a battle as well. Gets by Scored Buffalo, gets by TJ. That's Schumacher, who he has gone by and put a lap down. Oh, and Schumacher goes really wide back there. And now Tactical Fallout makes his stop. So the question is going to be, where does Dino Prime, the man he was fighting on track with, show up on track in relation to him? Dino's by Deed Speedman, and there's no traffic around for Dino. Dino's been stronger than Tac in traffic thus far today. We're seeing Tac's Chevrolet DPI already out of the pit box and rolling down pit road. Can Dino get ahead of him? It looks like yes. He's just going to be ahead of him as Tactical comes out of the pit lane. Gotta be very careful with cold tires, Tac. But Dino goes and gets a 1 second advantage over Tactical Fallout for second in his category. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Now Prime gets to the inside Coca Gamer. And Coca runs off circuit, so that means that he's really not going to hold up Tactical very much there. So for a rare circumstance, Tactical ends up benefiting from the lap traffic instead of Dino. And now this is where things get interesting. Scored Buffalo has gotten by TJ and is now focused on larrybtheg and SRD Shredder ahead. Buffalo still on his quest to try and make up as many spots as he can. The win of this race is becoming questionable because U5 has opened up a 5-second gap on Ludacris, and Ludacris has a 5-second gap on Brett, and both of them are well ahead of Shredder and Larry V. But Scored may still have at least a 4th place in the cards. He can see Larry and Shredder ahead, and he's going to pit. So Scored continuing to stick with the strategy of just staying off pit sequence with the rest of the field and try to spend as much time in clean air as possible. And there's your LMP2 fight as it goes by. Dino has the advantage, but Tactical Fallout is trying to get by him on the outside. As they go into the final corner, Tactical Fallout falls back in line behind Dino here. planting his machine on the curbs. Now, I did get a talk with Dino. Dino specifically said that he had done no dry weather testing. I believe TAC has, so as this goes on, there may be an advantage for TAC near the end of the event where the track properly dries out. For the moment, though, Tactical seems to be faster in cleaner air. Dino is faster dealing with dirt with traffic, though. And if TAC can get back in a second, that would be great, because it would be him overcoming an instant earlier in that number 14 machine. Lap traffic ahead, that's larrybtheg and Shredder still fighting. Larry making a dive bomb on Shredder, and there's nowhere for the DPIs to go. Larry slides by in front of Shredder, and that's going to open the door for TAC and Dino. They both go by without issue. They're still side-by-side for position as well behind. So Dino opens up the gap on TAC by just the smallest amount due to traffic, but TAC absolutely lunged, and he is still there, pressuring Dino for second in category. Schumacher pitting. That's his second stop of the day. And I believe Larry has made a stop. Yes, Larry has made his stop, as has Coca Gamer. So for Scored Buffalo, he is now ahead of Larry B on track, and this means that more than likely, walking out of this race, Scored will have the advantage in the points scenario. However, Scored is still 7.5 seconds behind Prius, and his problem is that every time he's caught Prius, it's been on track. And Scored is a long, long way out from U5 in the GT category lead right now. Brett, I believe, may have made a stop already. Yeah, Brett's just come off of his final stop. So that's why he's so far off from Ludacris at this point in the event. Shredder, oh wow, you can see he has absolutely burned his tires up. That's actually one of the reasons why they call him Shredder. Used to go by the name of Draggers X Ferrari, but he has since swapped the name Shredder because he has a reputation for being one of the fastest people on track, but it's at a very, very significant cost of burning his tires apart faster than anyone else in the categories. And Shredder barely pulls it into the pits. So this will let TJ get by, this will let Prius get by as well. Will Scored Buffalo get by Shredder? Because if he does, that will be great news for him. That's a DPI Class Leader Arsenal game by Buffalo now. So the challenge for Scored Buffalo to be running at the front and win this race, starting to become a little bit more possible, but he is still 25.5 seconds off of RZ and Brett in 9th. And Shredder ended up fighting right behind larrybtheg once again. So these two continue to fight in their category. Another fight that continues on track is this here, as Tactical Fallout continues to pressure Dino Prime. Here's the other battle to watch. OTR Anonyms as he has track close on LMP Grizz. We're going to go ahead and ride on board for a lap silently with Anonyms, see what it's like around a P2 car here in the drying conditions at Sebring. Alright, and we see on the timing there, just below the map, that Anonyms is closing on Grizz slowly but surely. In the DPI category, Tactical Foil has actually fallen off of Dino Prime just a bit. Gap opened up to 1.1 seconds, and now Dino catching lap traffic in the form of the GT car of Deed Speeman. Good timing is going to be key if TAC wants to close back in. Does not look like it's going to have that much of an effect, though, on this duo. Already both of them get by. So Down actually lost about 3/10 behind the GT car. Oh, TAC really sideways, though, putting the power down. Larry B still has the advantage over Shredder on track, but we have entered the final stage in the race. I didn't think we'd get to this point, but the track is now dry, and everyone who had set their cars up for wet weather circumstances are going to be struggling significantly now compared to the drivers who went with a straight dry setup. Shredder lunging to the inside of Larry B. Neck and neck with him. Runs the Ferrari wide. The BMW has the position. Ferrari trying to hold the inside. Will he send it under braking? He does send it under braking, and Shredder falls back behind the Ferrari. So the BMW driver wisely backed out of it. Now here's a gaggle. Watch this. Because Anonyms is dealing with GT traffic right now, and then once he passes the rest of this GT traffic, there will be nothing stopping him from going after Grizz. That's Prius Killer and the Viper ahead. Viper has good straight line speed, so the P2 is going to want to get by him sooner rather than later, so he doesn't have to burn up his own speed and potentially compromise his run. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Anonyms being held up significantly more in traffic than he wants. He is by the Dodge. The gap opened back up to 3.8 seconds. So Anonyms been stuck in that 3 to 5 second gap for so long. Grizz may have found something as this track has begun to dry out that has let him maintain a gap over Anonyms. For Anonyms, who is trying desperately to max out his LMP2 championship points lead here by completing a bunch of extra challenges, struggling now. And here's the other thing, there's about to be some DPI cars which are going to be faster than Anonyms. We're going to be knocking on his door. There's Dino Prime second in his category, and he'll be bringing Tactical Fallout with him as well. Anonyms gives Dino the inside line going into the corners. Anonyms, I would imagine he's going to try and get a draft off of Dino down the straight here. Grizz now 4.5 seconds. Well, the gap closed down to 4.1 seconds, but Grizz has opened up the gap on Anonyms going through traffic. Oh, and Grizz has crashed! Grizz has had an accident! And Grizz has crashed out of the top spot in his category! And that will give the challenge to Anonyms, as Grizz, who has led pretty much since the start of lap 2, has crashed out, and he will fall to second in his category. Frustrating for the man. And we've been deprived of an on-track battle, sadly, due to it. Frustration for Grizz. Here's a fight for in the lower spots of the GT category. Coca, again, in a one-off. He's not really going for any serious title run. This is expected to be a one-off for him in the BMW. He has closed in behind the Dodge of Prius Killer. Both of these cars relatively strong in a straight line, but it looks like Prius has been a little bit better between them. Here's another thing of interest. Brett in the Chevrolet has recently begun closing in on ludicrous speed for second in the GT category. Gaps down to 2.3 seconds between the duo. And while Ludacris does seem to open up in the corners, there are just enough straightaways here that seems like Brett has an advantage. Ludacris is not closing on U5. The gap has stayed at about 4.5 to 5.5 seconds since the end of the first round of stops. So the fight right now seems to be for second. Scored Buffalo, who is fourth in GT, 24 seconds out from our podium position drivers right now. He is going to likely leave here with the points lead, but will be massively, massively reduced. And his shot at trying to go for a challenge in his category has definitely hurt him. Scored now going to try and close that gap a bit by gaining bonus points for fastest lap in his category. Meanwhile, in the fight for second in the DPI class, traffic once again playing a factor. Dino gets by Scored Buffalo, and Tactical Fallout is going to have to try and outbrake the GT car. And he's by him. Scored really being held up. Scored's number one problem today seems to have been the DPI cars. But the gap has gone back down to less than a second between the teammates for second in this category. The DPI class leader is not too far away from them, but I don't think these two are at risk of going a lap down before race end. "21 minutes and 15 seconds left according to my clock. I did start my clock a little late, but we're still looking at about 21 minutes left at this stage in the event. And there goes Tactical, making his final stop now. So Dino will be able to run a few extra laps if he so chooses, which he is, under green flag conditions. 24% still left in the tank for Dino. For Tactical Fallout, it will be a little bit interesting. We do expect he should have the fuel and the tires to make it to the end, but it will be a little close for him. Dino, I would not be surprised if he goes ahead and runs this set of tires to the end. And then you also have Arsenal in the DPI category. He has now set Tactical a lap down, but he will likely have to pit. I believe he does have to pit one more time before this race is over. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and ride silently for a lap on board with Arsenal here around Daytona, so you can get an idea riding on board what it's like around this circuit trying to navigate traffic. So Arsenal, not been a perfect day. We've seen him bouncing off walls even on that lap alone, but he has had significant pace advantage over everyone else, and he has put the entire field in his category at least one lap down. He is anticipated to make one more stop, though, before the end of the race, and that may see Dino and Tactical Fallout get barely back onto the lead lap. Tactical Fallout has actually gotten ahead of Dino, as Dino actually lost time on his out lap. Did someone just lag out? Someone might have lagged out. We're waiting to see what the word is. No one's lagged out. That was weird. Okay. But yeah, Tactical Fallout now ahead of Dino, but still struggling with slower traffic. You can see very obviously he does not feel comfortable trying to get by even the P2s. And that will let Dino try and close back in a bit. The Grizz is really putting the pressure on Tack, because Grizz wants to get by that DPI sooner rather than later. As opposed, Dino's going to be able to get by him relatively simply in a straight line. So yeah, Dino still has the advantage while dealing with traffic, and the bad news for Tactical Fallout is that there's still another LMP2 car that these two are going to close up on. And then they also have GT cars ahead as well. So this fight is not over yet. Dino about 1 second out of Tactical Fallout at the moment. Dino, though, trying to overcome the fact that this car was not designed for the dry track conditions. A lot of people are expecting yellow flags early in the event to slow the pace of the race down. And due to the way that Forza's weather system works, where it's relayed based off of the lap instead of off of a certain amount of time that's elapsed, a lot of people are expecting that there wasn't going to be much running in the dry today. Brett has also caught Ludicrous speed for second in the GT category, interestingly enough. And that time, it looks like Tactical has actually gotten by the GT cars well enough, so the gap has opened up in Tac's favor. That is U5, the GT category leader, that this duo is about to close in on. And then once it's by the GT car, it will be clean sailing for these duo, because the next car ahead of them is Arsenal, who has put both of them a lap down, and he's anticipated to pit. And there we are, Tactical gets by U5 relatively cleanly in a braking zone. Dino is going to try and close back in on the straightaway. He should be able to navigate the GT car cleanly. Yes, he does. The gap, 0.7 seconds, but Dino is behind Tac. And there's not much likelihood that they're going to run into any more lap traffic between now and the race in. These two have made their final stops of the day. We're still waiting on Arsenal to make his final stop as well. Not a great run out of the final corner for Tac. Dino in the draft and trying to close in the top category for second spot. Ooh, wow, look at the heavy under braking. That 77 pulls up right behind the 14. Not able to get by him there, though. Much better run onto the straight for Tac. I'm going to be honest, I think this battle is probably going to work in Tactical Fallout's favor going to the end. Dino Prime is in a car that was set up mainly for dry weather conditions. Tac, while I don't know if it's set up for dry or wet weather conditions, he is known within the group to have some of the best engine setups. And although it is handling that will give you the lap time, having a better engine than your rivals will mean that you're in a good position to run defense throughout the entire day, and I think that's going to be what gives Tac the advantage, as long as he can keep control of the car to the end, because it's not likely they're going to catch traffic again between now and the end of this race. And Dino's trying to overcome what's probably a weaker engine setup, and a setup that was designed for wet weather rather than dry conditions. Credit where it's due, he is staying within a second of his teammate, but I think this battle is going to go in Tac's favor. Interestingly enough, this man here, Schumacher, is actually fighting to get back into fourth overall. He's basically locked into dead last in his class, but he will have to pit one more time before this race is over, sadly. Schumacher trying to recover from an early race accident. Oh, and Ludicrous has lost a position. Ludicrous has potentially lost a position to Brett. So the Chevys are coming on strong, and it may be a Chevy 1-2 in all the categories. Ludacris sends it to the inside of Brett. It's been Chevy 1, 2, 3 in the DPI class all day long. There are only Chevys allowed in the LMP2 class, so that's obvious. But U5 in the Chevy has led most of the day, and Brett is trying to get second place as well. So it may be a Chevrolet lockout 1-2 all across the board. As LMP2 cars coming into this fray here. That's Anonyms. So yes, our leader in the DPI class, Arsenal, has made his final stop. And Dino has lost touch with Tactical Flaw at this point in the event as well. There goes Anonyms. We'll likely see Schumacher go by these two shortly as well. But he's going to be pitting shortly also. Ooh, Ludacris runs off circuit. Yeah, it looks like Ludacris, he's still ahead of Brett for the moment, but it has not gone easy for him here. Brett closing once again on the Ford GT down the straights. Ford, we know, is faster in the corners than the straightaways. The Chevys are more of all-rounder cars. Also note, scored Buffalo 20 seconds out of this fight, but he would need everyone in the podium positions to wreck out in his category if he wants a shot at completing the winning challenge. For him, I think he's just going to go for fastest lap of the race point. P2's kind of giving Brett a bit of a headache there as they go into this heavy braking zone. But yeah, this fight for second in GT is alive. Time continues to tick away. All of your categories' top spots are locked up, except for this one here, second in the GT category, with 6.5 minutes left in the session. In this race. I shouldn't say session, I should say race. Ludacris continues to hold over RZM Brett. you can see the straight line advantage of the Chevy. Yes, here, this isn't even a real hardcore straight, but you can see he closes in right behind the Ford. Under braking, it seems like the advantage is still with the Ford, but again, I don't know if Ludacris was set up for wetter conditions or if it is just circumstances regarding the way the cars are balanced. The Ford is long known in this game to be, if you want to properly balance it, you balance it to be slower in the straights and faster in the corners. Right now, it seems to be the only thing that's giving Ludacris an advantage. It's denying Brett a chance to lunge under braking against him. But Brett is trying to counter that by being as close to the Ford as he can coming out of the corners, because I think Brett is going to just try and outrun that Ford GT ahead going into the final corner here. The gap is half a second this time. He's got the draft off of the Ford. Closing with speed. Looking to the inside. Can't make it stick. He'll get another shot here, going down the main straightaway. U5, the category leader, is well ahead of these two. Also, DPI of Schumacher about to show up, so that could end up having a effect on this fight, depending on how quickly he gets by and if he denies a proper lane to one of these two. Again, GT cars are allowed to run wherever their line they want. DPIs are technically the ones that have to lay aside for the GTs. Alright, and Schumacher already by Brett. He should already be by Ludacris. Yeah, so that wasn't too much of an issue there. That was kind of a nothing burger. Again, power down, and Ludacris ends up being about 6/10 ahead. But then, the longer the straights go on, the more and more Brett closes. He can get within about a third of a second, but can't seem to get his car alongside the Ford at any point on the track. Also, bad news for the drivers in the DPI category. Arsenal is threatening to put second and third a lap down. Just about 3 minutes left on the clock for Arsenal. So about two more laps worth in the DPI category. And there's a chance that Arsenal will put the entire field a lap down. Again, we turn our focus on the fight for second in GT. It does seem like the advantage is sliding in Ludacris's favor. But for Chevy, this has been an absolutely fantastic comeback. Last week, it was BMW that was the #1 manufacturer in the GT class. This week, it seems to be Chevrolet who is ending up on top in this category. Ludacris, the gap's only 3/10 right now. Goes back up to 4/10, but this is going to be one of Brett's best runs. He's going to have the speed. He backs out of it again. Brett, very, very conscientious. He does not want to make any possible accidents. All right, he's closer this time than he has been the last few laps, going down the back straightaway. Here he is. He dives to the inside, going into the final corner. Neck and neck for second in the GT category. Ludacris runs wide. Brett holds the inside. The Ford GT is completely sideways. He's drifting. He's sideways. He's lost it. Brett goes up to second now in the GT class. It is Chevrolet 1, 2, 3 in DPI. It is Chevrolet 1, 2 in LMP2. It is Chevrolet 1, 2 in the GT category. So Chevrolet putting on their A game here in the closing moments as we have less than 20 seconds left in the race. And Tactical Fallout has officially gone a lap down to Arsenal at this point. And this should be it. This should be the last or next to last lap here. My timer is now going off. So race is over. Also, credit where credit is due, Anonyms with a 9-second gap over Grizz. So Anonyms most definitely had enough time that even if Grizz didn't have his accident, he would have taken the position. Ludacris is not done with fighting for second, but looks like the fight might be over irregardless of what he says. Brett has opened it up to a 1-second gap. Ludacris can close by about a quarter of a second in the corners, but then Brett slowly, surely nullifies that in the straights. Class leader, U5, is just about 6 seconds ahead. That's about the gap that he has held over second place since the end of the first round of stops. As U5 comes across the line, so this is the white flag for the GT class. Arsenal on his final lap in the DPI class. And Arsenal has put everyone in his category a lap down as we see he's going to overtake the GT category leader there. Ludacris still hanging about 1 second behind Brett, but the advantage is very solidly in the Chevy's favor for second. Our LMP2 cars are pulling off. Ludacris losing touch. It looks like this fight is over. The gap is now over 1 second in Brett's favor. Coming down the back straightaway for the final time, RZM Arsenal has led from the pole every single lap in the DPI category. He won last week at Daytona on technicality, but those points don't count because he has swapped to the Chevrolet. It looks like the swap has gone well because Arsenal will put everyone else in his category a lap down and will take home a win and a Chevrolet 1, 2, 3 in the top class. OTR Anonyms is your winner in the GT category. Here comes U5 in the GTs, and he will take home a 1-2 finish for the Chevrolet team in GT. So Chevrolet showing up with impressive repertoire here across all the categories for IESC, and this will bring us to the end here. Going to go ahead and try to get our top 2 in each category into the party and hear what they have to say about that run. All right, and first up is going to be your winners in the DPI category. Arsenal, go ahead, make sure your audio is included. You swapped cars coming into this race, so you have no points left over from Daytona, but you took the pole and led flag to flag, put everyone else in the category a lap down. Impressive run. Did you even break a sweat out there?
In the rain, yeah. It was still quite a challenge. Almost lost it on a good few laps there, so I could have changed things a little bit. But yeah, other than that, it was good, clean race. Quite peaceful. Just try to keep it on the track, not make any mistakes.
Alright. Well, Arsenal, this is going to really shake up the points quite a bit. You basically have this win with a bunch of other stuff. So now the real question is going to be, can you replicate this next week at Circuit of the Americas under the nighttime circumstances that will be right then?
Well, it depends who turns up, because we were meant to have, I believe it was Mercy, but he didn't turn up today, and I think I'm quite equal with him. So if he's there, we'll see, but if not, we'll see what I can do there.
All right, well, fascinating job, Arsenal. You can hold your head high, technically back-to-back wins, but this one, no controversy, no nothing, just straight dominance. Now I want to talk to second place finisher, Tactical Fallout. Tac, it's been a very interesting watching you throughout today's race. In the wet, you seem to be a little bit slower than your rival. We saw you get involved in 2 different accidents in the wet, but then as the track dried out, you got faster and faster and faster and faster. And in the end, you ended up ahead of your teammate and rival, Down Prime. What got you back ahead of him by the end of that race?
Well, I honestly feel like it was the fact that he actually is talking to me right now saying he couldn't see his braking lines, so I'm pretty sure it was just the fact that he couldn't slow the car down properly for the corner, whether it was too late or too early. But I mean, I just ran him down, and then he pit later than me by a lap, and when he came out of the pits, we were literally side by side, and because my tires were already warm, I just pulled away from him in that tight bit.
All right, so a little bit of solid pit strategy going forward. So the question now becomes, all right, so you've now finished second. Do you think, and you finished ahead of your teammate and rival, so the question is, can you improve? Do you think a win is in the cards for you going forward this year?
Well, if Arsenal and no one else shows up, probably.
All right. Well, I appreciate the honesty. Good job on the second place finish, Tac. It was well earned. Now we want to go ahead and talk with our LMP2 drivers. First up, our winner, OTR Anonyms. Anonyms, very interesting run from you. We thought it would be an easy walkaway for you today. You know, it was just you and one other person. But slower traffic in the form of Schumacher in the DPI category caused you to lose the lead on the first lap before you even got to the pits. But you came back. What do you have to say about your run today?
Well, it was not actually Schumacher that cost me the lead. I was really like Grizz being more used to the actual braking point. He did brake perfectly for that corner, and I just went early. Then afterwards, pit lap 1, going through the GT traffic, pretty difficult in a way, but it was fine the first time, and then I think I had caught a bike about half the time lost from the pits. By the time I did my second stop, which was Grizz's first stop, and well, afterwards it was just really trying to catch him until he unfortunately had an issue with the GT car, which made him lose the lead. That's pretty much it.
All right, so Anonyms, this puts you in a great position points-wise. Do you think you can add to this point tally and lock up the title in LMP2 early, or do you think there might be a little bit more fighting for the title going forward left?
Honestly, considering I might miss another few rounds, I'm hoping I can maybe add more points like next race, and then try to build a gap to Critical because I know he's going to be one tough guy to beat.
All right. Well, I do want to say thanks for jumping in and talking with us. Great job on your win out there, mate.
Thank you.
All right, we also want to go ahead and talk real quickly with LMP Grizz. Grizz, you had a really good start to today's race, led a bunch of laps, instant third with the slower category. What happened? All right, so now the question I have is, if that didn't happen, do you think you could have won against Anonyms? All right. Well, either way, Grizz, I'm just going to go ahead and say, great run for you today. Yes, there may have only been 2 cars in your category for today's race, but you did put on a very respectable show. It's a shame that it got marred in that way. Hopefully we get to see you showing up again next week at COTA. All right, now I want to go ahead and talk with our 2 Chevy GT drivers, U5 and Brett. Also, I just want to go ahead and say to everyone, although one of our guys have already left, Chevrolet 1-2 lockout across all the categories, so great job there. U5, you ended up inheriting the lead after scored Buffalo pit lap 1 and kind of walked off throughout the race. Walk us through the race from your perspective, because to us, it looked easy for you.
Definitely wasn't. Especially since I made a couple of mistakes early, which almost cost me with Shredder being there, and then the more the track got drier, I wasn't really hitting my lines the way I should have, and at the time I was seeing Brett was just really closing in. My only saving grace was Alan was still between me and Brett. But I just made sure I made no mistakes, and that was my saving grace this race.
All right. Outstanding job with the win. Obviously scored Buffalo having pitted early. He ended up not factoring in at all in the end of this event. So now the question is, you've won today. You finished 3rd last week at Daytona. COTA's up next. Do you think you can continue this run of podium finishes for you?
Absolutely.
All right. I like hearing that confidence. It's been great to see what you're able to pull off today, mate. Also want to talk real quickly to Brett. Brett, make sure your audio is included. Fantastic run all the way with that great classic Ford versus Chevrolet battle in those last 4 laps where you finally overtook him. But man, what about the entire race overall? Walk us through the entire race from your perspective, Brett.
Yeah, so off the start, I really just couldn't put consistent laps together. Just I had to let Shredder and Alan through, and kind of just, you know, took what the race was giving me. I just couldn't get consistency out of the car. Then the conditions started to dry up, and I just continued and got quicker and quicker. And I caught Alan and was gaining on U5 too. But it took some work to pass Alan. That Ford was really good in the braking zones. I just couldn't get through. You know, I would pass him into the braking zone, but he'd come right back through in the corner and just defend his position. So I was glad I was finally able to get him. But yeah, it was a really fun battle we had.
All right, outstanding. I agree. That's probably some of the best racing we've seen. Yes, we're only 2 races in, but that's probably going to be some of the best racing we're going to end up seeing in the GT category all day. So now the question is, do you think you can replicate this with another top 2 or podium position next week at COTA?
Yeah, I think so. COTA's a pretty good track of mine. I've done well there in the past, so pretty confident, yeah.
All right. Well, I do want to say thanks for jumping in and talking with us. Great battle you had down to the end there, and great job bringing home the final bit of the Chevrolet dominance here at Sebring today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. A lot of fun.
All right, so that will pretty much wrap up our broadcast here today at Sebring. In a week's time, 1 second, please. Excuse me. Sorry about that. In a week's time, we will be going underway at Circuit of the Americas, and that will be in the middle of the night. So pure night racing like what we saw at Daytona last week. But unlike Daytona, Circuit of the Americas doesn't have any natural light. It's going to make things very interesting, a lot more difficult there for a lot of the categories. Also of note is that in a few hours, I'll be covering the Apex NASCAR event as they will be taking their time around the Daytona road course. And then tomorrow, I also will be doing the Apex F1 broadcast late Sunday night. But you will be catching IESC again next week. I do want to say thank you very much for jumping in and watching with us. And until next time, goodbye.